The Montauk Project is arguably one of the most interesting but spurious modern accounts of our times. Supposedly conducted between the years of the 1970s and 1980s at Camp Hero, set in Montauk, Long Island, the supposed project had taken a series of experiments from mind control and time travel to other forms of psychological manipulations. These claims have generated a tremendous amount of debate, articles, and even cultural phenomena such as Stranger Things. It is not, however, the sensational stories of mind control which are as interesting as the real possibility these activities occurred within Cold War paranoia, secret government programs, and the era of scientific experimentation which often conducted its business outside of ethical authority. The Cold War context. The Cold War was more than a geopolitical struggle between the United States and the Soviet Union. It was also an ideological battle fought in the secret laboratories and intelligence agencies as both superpowers sought to outmaneuver each other, not just militarily, but psychologically. It was not just the imminent threat of nuclear annihilation that made governments afraid, but the prospect that an adversary might develop mind control techniques, or worse, gain control over time itself. Programs like MKUltra, starting in the early 1950s, were a direct consequence of such fears. MKUltra was an ultra-secret government mind control program conducted by the CIA to explore the use of drugs, hypnosis, and other forms of psychological manipulation. As programs like these continued to grow, many believed that they spawned even more secret projects, perhaps more ethically grey in nature, such as the Montauk Project. The governments understood that if well utilized, control of the human mind could turn into the ultimate weapon. While nuclear arsenals constituted physical destruction, controlling thought processes would imply generations-long predominance over people's. In this respect, the striving for psychological preeminence falls in with the more general strategic Cold War aims of the United States. From radar towers to secret tunnels. The Montauk Project is inextricably intertwined with Camp Hero, a military base born from an urgent need to protect the US coastlines during the somber days of the Second World War. Officially, Camp Hero had been a coastal defense station, fitted with powerful radar technology to detect enemy aircraft. But when the base was decommissioned in the mid-1980s, it's alleged that most of what actually went on at the site had occurred underground, beneath the radar tower, in a maze-like complex of tunnels and secret chambers. These facilities, according to conspiracy theorists, house some of the most advanced technology in human history and form the epicenter of the Montauk Project. It is said that in some of the experiments, including mind control and time manipulation, the radar tower itself played a vital role. This was an enormous leftover radar system from World War II, capable of broadcasting immense electromagnetic waves that could be harnessed for experiments far beyond simple communications reported in various sources. Of all people connected with the Montauk Project, Preston Nichols is probably the most famous participant to come forward and say that the radar was being converted to interface with human consciousness in ways that science had only just begun to understand. According to Nichols, it wasn't just radar signals being sent out from Montauk, but thought patterns, the Montauk Chair, and the experiments in mind control. Central to experiments allegedly conducted under the Montauk Project is a device known as the Montauk Chair, which amplifies the psychic abilities of whoever sat in it. The so-called Montauk Chair, a piece of technology supposedly designed by reverse engineering extraterrestrial devices, another claim often attached to the project, would materialize thoughts into physical manifestations. This is no small claim. If true, this would redefine the limits of human consciousness. According to Nichols, the Montauk Chair worked by taking the thoughts of the person sitting in it and translating them into electromagnetic frequencies that could be broadcast through the radar. These signals would have the power to alter perceptions, influence behavior, and in some cases, create physical objects. The idea that psychic energy can create physical reality has some metaphoric parallels in some of the views espoused in quantum mechanics, but there is no scientifically accepted basis for such a claim. What is truly chilling, though, is how this technology is said to have been used on test subjects. Often unwilling and unaware of the full scope of the project, were strapped into the Montauk Chair and forced to endure mental and psychological experiments that pushed them to their limits, using this not just to read thoughts, but to control them. This was supposed to allow project researchers to unlock latent psychic abilities such as telepathy, remote viewing, and even precognition by amplifying the brain waves of individuals. One of the most disturbing claims linked with these experiments is the assertion that children were among the test subjects used. The story goes that youngsters, often orphans or otherwise abandoned, were kidnapped and taken to Montauk to be subjected to these experiments in mind control. The psychological trauma inflicted on these children was said to be part of the process in which breaking of the minds was necessary if the technology was going to set about working its magic. From mind control to time travel. Perhaps the weirdest of all claims regarding the Montauk Project involves time travel experiments. According to the claims, as the research supposedly progressed, it moved from purely thought control to experimenting with the manipulation of space-time itself. The Montauk Chair, along with other pieces of exotic technologies, enabled the researchers to open what they called time tunnels, which were essentially portals connecting two different points in space-time. According to Nichols and other whistleblowers, early time travel experiments were chaotic and unpredictable. Often, the objects that went through the time tunnels would return disoriented, with memories in pieces or entirely erased. Sometimes they were even physically different, and sometimes they didn't return at all. But as the technology was perfected, so the claim goes, these portals became much more manageable, even to the point of allowing researchers to send people back to specific points in history or even into the future. One oft-retold story involves the researchers of the Montauk Project sending their subjects back to 1943 to participate in the infamous Philadelphia experiment. Already steeped in mythology, this experiment reportedly involved a US Navy attempt to render the USS Eldridge invisible to radar. It was time travel that connected the events of the Philadelphia experiment with those at Montauk, according to the stories coming from Montauk, in a way that essentially underlined the long-running interest by the government in the manipulations of space-time. This would therefore lead to serious ethical and philosophical questions if a group of scientists operating behind closed doors were able to access such technology. If it were the case, a small clique would be afforded a level of control over human history previously unheard of, and with which to influence and manipulate events according to their various plans and machinations. The psychological effects of time travel and parallel universes. If the tales of participants in the Montauk Project are to be believed, time travel was certainly not without its consequences. Many subjects who participated in these experiments often returned psychologically broken, their minds fractured by the experience of moving between timelines. It would appear that the human brain was never designed to handle the disorienting effects of time travel, and the result was often permanent mental damage. Even more unnerving, however, is the implication that many of these experiments were conducted not simply to observe history, but to change it. Supposed Montauk Project forays into timelines raise a question as to whether the reality we experience today has been shaped or manipulated by forces operating behind the scenes. With the capability of time travel, it is conceivably possible that the researchers at Montauk might have interfered with historical events of importance and thus changed the course of history, to which we would never know the details. Besides the multiplicity of timelines, there is a chance that every decision taken and every action performed creates a reality, and the number of such realities could be innumerable. According to some reports, the researchers at Montauk used the time tunnels to explore these parallel universes in search of Earths where history had taken very different courses. Some of these parallel universes were dystopian, one with an oppressive government, another that had been torn apart by some sort of catastrophic event. The eerily similar fears of the Cold War, the Montauk Boys, human experimentation on children. One of the most unsettling parts of the Montauk Project is the claim that there was systematic use of children as test subjects in these experiments. The children, often referred to as the Montauk Boys, were allegedly abducted or otherwise lured to this facility and then subjected to horrific psychological and physical abuse in the name of science. These experiments reportedly were attempts at the breaking of minds and bodies in order to tap into latent psychic abilities. The traumas inflicted upon the children were reportedly part of the process of making psychic warriors, people who would use their minds to enslave others or even change reality. Indeed, some children reportedly developed incredible abilities from such experiments: telekinesis, telepathy, and remote viewing. But most subjects suffered long-term psychological damage, with many disappearing altogether, their fates unknown. The use of children in those experiments further provides a parallel to other government programs, such as MKUltra, in which vulnerable citizens are often used. However, the notion that children could be used in this manner, in the interest of the advancement of science, is particularly concerning and discusses the ethics involved in government experimentation. The science of mind control. While the notion of mind control has been a niche fascination for scientists and conspiracy theorists alike, is there any validity whatsoever to the scientific claims made about the Montauk Project? While much that has been said certainly strains credulity, there is an underlying element of truth to the story that makes it more credible as a legitimate scientific research study into human consciousness and brain function. To illustrate, there are electromagnetic waves involved in activity within the brain, and the use of electromagnetic fields to affect thought patterns has long been researched by scientists. Though the concept of large-scale mind control must remain in the realm of science fiction, there do exist some documented techniques that involve synchronizing brainwaves using external stimuli, such as light or sound, in what is known as brainwave entrainment. The idea of creating a more malleable mind with psychological trauma, however, is by no means without historical precedent. Indeed, much of the research that took place within the MKUltra project involved efforts to break individuals using drugs, sensory deprivation, and psychological abuse as controlling measures for the purpose of behavioral modification. While MKUltra largely focused on individual test subjects, it is not entirely impossible to scale similar techniques up in attempts to influence larger populations. Advanced technology used to heighten psychic ability, supposedly implemented in the Montauk Project, borrows from a very niche interest in parapsychology, or the study of things like telepathy, telekinesis, and remote viewing. As mainstream science has largely rejected such notions, they remain a subject of interest among fringe research circles. Government secrecy and the ethics of experimentation. The most intriguing element of the Montauk Project is simply that it could be pulled off in complete and utter secrecy, out of the view of the general public for years. Though it might be very difficult to confirm specific claims associated with time travel or mind control, the broader idea of secret government programs with unscrupulous human experimentation is definitely nothing new. The likes of MKUltra and Operation Paperclip have proved that the US government has conducted clandestine experiments on both civilians and military personnel without their knowledge or consent. These were under the rubric of national security, but they raise serious ethical questions about how much power a government should be allowed to wield and the responsibility of the scientists. The Montauk Project, if it were to be true, would be an extreme case of such unbridled power. It would turn out that a handful of people conducted experiments that do not just play with human consciousness, but even the fabric of reality. A notion as fascinating as it is terrifying. That is a question of government involvement in scientific research, ethics of experimentation, use of technology, cultural impact, and legacy. Even though many still fob the Montauk Project off as an advanced hoax, its impact on popular culture cannot be denied. From such a project came a spew of books, films, and shows, including, most notably, the hit series Stranger Things, which takes most of its inspiration from those themes of government experimentation, psychic powers, and alternate realities. The Montauk Project combines advanced science with conspiracy, tapping into the deep-seated fears in government power and the capabilities of the human mind that are largely unknown even to this day. In these manners, the story certainly does touch upon the dangerous combinations of unbridled authority and moral dilemmas imposed by scientific progress, regardless of the validity of specific claims. A warning to the future. The Montauk Project thus comes to remind us that scientific progress, with its great potential, is nonetheless very dangerous. Uncontrolled pursuit of cognition can result in a real catastrophe for individuals and the entire society. Science and technology are an open book many times, relaying stories that are still untold. It is to this regard that abuse of many kinds may turn up. The story of the Montauk Project may never be wholly verified, but its message is clear. Power must be tempered by responsibility, and the pursuit of knowledge must always be guided by ethical principles. A legacy of questions. The Montauk Project may never be proven or disproven, but the legend lives on. It raises profound questions about the limits of human knowledge, the ethical bounds of experimentation, and the use of technology in ways that shape our reality. Whether the Montauk Project is fact or fiction, it certainly serves in one major capacity, that of a cautionary tale about the risks of unrestrained power, the nuances of the human mind, and the responsibility we carry with the bounds of science that increase day by day. We move into the future, not to forget any lessons the effort to uncover Montauk has taught, so our pursuit of knowledge will never be at an availing cost to our humanness. Thank you for spending time with us through Spookscope today. Feel free to share your knowledge and wisdom in the comments section, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel and share it with your friends and family. Until next time, my dear spooker, stay curious,